When I finally told my mother that I was going to take the vacations I had wanted for years, she said, "Great, we can go together." So I did something that no one in my family ever believed I would finally stand up for, and their reaction made me do something I should have done a long time ago. I'm 34. Never married, no kids. My whole life, my mom's had me wrapped around her finger. I was the good son, the reliable one, the one who stays. My older brother moved across the country the second he turned 18 and never looked back. My dad passed when I was 15, and after that it was just me and mom. And I mean just me and mom in every suffocating, codependent sense of the word. She was never physically abusive. That's what made it harder to even recognize it for what it was. Emotional manipulation? Check. Guilt tripping? Constantly. Love bombing 1 minute and passive-aggressive martyrdom the next? Her specialty. Growing up, anytime I wanted something for myself, she'd make it about her. I got into a university 2 states over? Why do you want to leave me? I'll be all alone. I dated a girl in college who suggested we move in together? That's just going to end in heartbreak and then you'll come crawling back. I mentioned going to therapy? Why would you need therapy? Are you saying I was a bad mother? So yeah, it's been years of swallowing my own needs. I live 15 minutes from her. I do her grocery shopping, fix anything that breaks in her house, and drive her to appointments. I've put off vacations, dating, hell, even job opportunities because she'd pull some dramatic health scare the second I showed signs of wanting independence. I'm not saying she fakes stuff, but she sure as hell knows how to weaponize her health and loneliness. But here's where the story begins. A few months ago, I got a huge bonus at work. I've been busting my ass for years, and this was the first time I felt like I had permission to do something for me. So I did what I've daydreamed about for years. I booked a 2-week vacation to Portugal. No compromises, no family trips, no pretending to be happy watching HGTV in some rented cabin. Just me, sunshine, ocean, wine, and peace. I didn't tell my mom at first. I felt guilty, isn't that crazy? Like I was cheating on her or something. But eventually, I mentioned it over coffee, trying to act casual. So I booked a trip. Just me. Going to Portugal in May. Her eyes lit up like I'd said I'd won the lottery. But instead of congratulating me, she smiled and said, "Great. We can go together." I just froze. I didn't say anything right away. My mind was already screaming, "No, no, no, not again." But on the outside, I just gave a weird laugh like, "Haha, no, I meant I'm going alone." She tilted her head and looked genuinely wounded. "You're going alone? Why would you want to do that? That's not safe. And you hate being alone, remember?" There it was. The guilt. The rewriting of who I am to fit her narrative. I do enjoy being alone, but she's convinced herself I'm some fragile puppy who needs her constant supervision. I tried to set the boundary gently. "I just really need this. For myself." She scoffed. "You're being selfish. After everything I've done for you? I'm your mother." And that's when something cracked in me. Maybe it was the way she said it. Like I owed her my life. Like my adulthood was just a lease she could revoke. The next day, I told her I wasn't changing the trip. I told her I needed space, that she couldn't just invite herself. She cried. She actually sobbed like a child. Said she felt abandoned. Told my aunt that I was breaking her heart. And guess what? My phone lit up with texts from family members calling me ungrateful. But for the first time ever, I didn't bend. I let the calls go to voicemail. I didn't reply to the texts. And when my mom showed up at my apartment unannounced 2 days before the flight, I didn't answer the door. I felt sick, honestly. My stomach was in knots. Every time I looked at my packed suitcase, I felt like a traitor. But I also felt something else. Power? Clarity? It was unfamiliar but addictive. The day of the flight, I turned off my phone, got in the Uber, and just left. That's all for now. I'll share the confrontation and the aftermath in part 2. But to anyone out there with a parent who uses guilt like a leash, you're not crazy. And you don't owe your freedom to anyone who keeps you caged in their idea of loyalty. So yeah, I got on the plane. First time flying internationally alone, and my nerves were fighting it the whole way. I kept expecting someone to call me over the intercom like, "Sir, your mother is on the tarmac sobbing. Do you want to go back?" But no, just quiet. Just me, my passport, and the heavy silence of finally doing something for myself. I landed in Lisbon and it was beautiful, surreal, and weirdly sad at first. Like my body was there but my brain hadn't caught up. I kept checking my phone out of habit. 15 missed calls from mom, 3 voicemails from my aunt, and a novel-length text from my cousin that opened with, "Hey, I know you love your mom but..." and went downhill from there. I didn't answer any of it. That first day I walked around in a fog, ate seafood by the harbor, sat in a plaza with a beer and watched a group of tourists try to understand the tram system. But I couldn't stop thinking, did I do the right thing? Am I a terrible son? And then the hammer dropped. On the third day of my trip, I woke up to a photo from a friend who follows my mom on Facebook. It was a picture of her sitting at a cafe in a sun hat and sunglasses. Captioned, "Lisbon with my baby. Nothing better than spontaneous trips, Orange Heart Airplane, Portugal #MotherAnson #bonding time." I swear I dropped my damn phone. My blood went cold. She had actually followed me to Portugal. I sat there stunned, staring at the screen while my breakfast went cold. I thought maybe it was an old photo. Maybe she was joking. But nope. She posted a story right after the freaking hotel lobby I was staying in. She found me. I felt like I couldn't breathe. This was next level. She must have gone through my email or found my itinerary some other way. Maybe she remembered the name of the hotel I mentioned offhand in a weak moment. I don't even know. I locked down every online account right then and there. Within the hour, the hotel front desk called my room. "Sir, there's a woman downstairs asking to be let up. She says she's your mother." I told them absolutely not. I think I just sat on the bed for 30 minutes afterward. My hands were shaking. I felt like I was 16 again, trying to hide from her after I told her I wanted to spend Christmas at my dad's side of the family, and she threw my suitcase out into the snow. Eventually, I went down the back stairwell, slipped out the side, and walked for hours. I couldn't think. I couldn't believe I was on another continent and still couldn't get away from her. When I came back that night, the front desk handed me a note. Her handwriting. "You left me. I came here because I love you and you clearly need me. I forgive you for pushing me away. Please let me in before something terrible happens." The emotional blackmail was textbook. She didn't even try to hide it. I don't know what something terrible was supposed to mean, hers or mine, but the implication was clear. If you keep shutting me out, I'll make sure you feel guilty for whatever happens next. But here's the wild thing. I didn't fall for it this time. Something in me just hardened. I walked right past the note and went to sleep. I didn't check for updates. I didn't call her. And when she finally flew back 2 days later because, she only booked 3 nights, I didn't even acknowledge it. I stayed. I visited Sintra. I swam in the Atlantic. I hiked alone through forests that smelled like eucalyptus and salt. And I started to feel something I hadn't felt since I was a kid. Peace. Of course, the texts kept coming. She sent everything from, "I hope you're safe," to, "I'm having chest pains from the stress you've caused me." My aunt messaged that mom had cried herself into a migraine. My cousin said, "She was just trying to be part of your life. Can you blame her?" Yes, I can. And for the first time in my life, I did. I'll get into what happened when I got home in part 3, because that's when shit really hit the fan. Family meetings, betrayal from someone I trusted, and me finally saying the thing I'd never dared say out loud. But here's the question that keeps spinning in my head. What kind of parent feels entitled to own their child's happiness? Have any of you ever had to literally run away just to figure out who you are without the shadow of a parent over you? Was it worth it in the end? So after my mom flew back home, I had 7 uninterrupted days left in Portugal. The silence was beautiful. Not just the lack of her voice, but the absence of that guilt soundtrack that always played in my head. What will she think? Will she be okay? Am I being selfish? I didn't reply to a single message. I didn't check her Facebook. I told the front desk to block all unknown guests from asking for my room. And somewhere between wandering Alfama at midnight and watching the sunset in Porto with a bottle of wine and a stranger's dog curled next to me, I made a decision. I was done. Not just done with the vacation. Done with being a son on a leash. I came back to the States and my mom was waiting in my building's lobby. Of course she was. Hair perfectly done, dressed like someone auditioning for a concerned mother in a Hallmark movie. As soon as she saw me, she stood up, arms open like she expected a hug and forgiveness and maybe even thanks. I didn't hug her. I didn't even stop walking. I just said, "Move," and brushed past her like she was another stranger on the street. She gasped like I'd slapped her and let out a soft, "You've changed." I kept walking. Upstairs, my apartment was exactly how I'd left it except cleaner. That immediately freaked me out. I checked the back door. Locked. Front? Locked. But then I looked at the mail. Opened. She'd been inside. I have no idea how. Maybe she guilt my super, maybe she used the spare key I gave her just in case years ago. But it didn't matter. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just emotional manipulation anymore, it was control. She had no sense of boundaries because in her mind I belonged to her. I packed a duffel bag and went to stay at a friend's place for the week. Changed my locks the next day. Sent her a text that said, simply, "You are not allowed in my apartment anymore. I'm changing the locks. Do not contact me until I say otherwise." She lost her mind. I got voicemails alternating between sobbing and screaming. "How dare you? I was just trying to help. Do you know what you're doing to me?" One of them ended with, "You'll regret this when I'm gone." That one almost got me. But then I remembered the damn Facebook post in Lisbon. The way she turned my solo trip into a mother-son fantasy for her little online following. The audacity of it. The way she thought her presence was the gift. 2 days later, my aunt called and said Mom had told the whole family I was having a breakdown. That she was worried I'd been radicalized by online therapy cults. No joke. That's how far she went to keep herself the victim. What hit me hardest though, what absolutely wrecked me, was when my cousin, the one I actually liked, took her side. He messaged me this long essay about family being everything and how some people don't understand what it's like to be alone at Mom's age. Then he dropped the line that just about shattered something in me. "She's not trying to hurt you. She just doesn't know who she is without you." That right there? That was the problem. I'm not her therapist. I'm not her emotional husband. I'm her son. And the fact that she's turned her loneliness into my cage is not noble. It's selfish. So I did the thing I thought I'd never do. I told my job I was taking a 6-week sabbatical. I packed everything important into a storage unit. And I drove 8 hours north to a little cabin I found on Airbnb with no cell service and no damn guilt tripping. I left my cousin a voicemail. "You're right. She doesn't know who she is without me. But I'm starting to learn who I am without her. And I like the guy a hell of a lot better." The night before I left, I got one final message from her. Not a call, not a voicemail. A photo. It was an old picture of me, age 5, holding her hand at the zoo. Captioned, "You used to love me. What happened?" And read it, I cried. I cried so hard my chest hurt. Not because of the photo, but because I finally understood. I loved her when I didn't know what love was. I've learned since. I've learned that love without respect is just control. That guilt is not a form of care. That you can mourn the mother you wished you had while letting go of the one who won't let go of you. The cabin I booked wasn't anything fancy. Just a single-bedroom shack in the middle of a pine forest somewhere in Washington. No internet. Barely any cell service unless I climbed the hill out back and waved my phone like a prayer. But that's what I wanted, silence. Not the awkward kind, but the kind where your brain stops playing reruns of every guilt trip, every manipulative look, every whispered, "After all I've done for you." When I got there, I slept for 14 hours straight. I didn't know how exhausted I'd been carrying her on my back for decades. That first week, I did nothing. I sat on the porch with coffee and stared at trees. I read 3 books. I watched a deer walk through the clearing and cried for no reason other than it wasn't asking anything from me. But the emotional detox hit hard. I had dreams about her almost every night. Sometimes she was yelling at me for leaving. Sometimes she was sick, fragile, begging for help. And in one, she just looked at me and said, "You'll always come back to me. You know you will." That dream haunted me for days. Then came the messages. Even with barely any reception, my phone would load texts once I reached the top of the ridge on my hikes. I stopped checking after the second day, but before that, here's a sample. "Mom, your aunt said you're staying in some shack. You'll get hurt or robbed out there. You're not thinking clearly. Cousin, come home. She's not eating right. She says she doesn't see the point anymore." And the one that really set me off. "Mom, you can run, but I'll always be your mother." It was like she wanted to be inescapable. And for most of my life, she was. But then something happened, something small, stupid even. I was chopping wood because of course the place had a wood-burning stove and I split a log perfectly down the middle on the first try. I stood there staring at it, winded, sweating, and suddenly I just laughed. Like, deep, gut-level laughing. Not because it was funny, but because it was mine. That moment. That success. That breath. No one saw it. No one praised it. No one needed anything from me after. And it was still enough. I realized I hadn't felt that kind of ownership over my own life since I was a kid, before my dad died, before the "just you and me now" speeches, before she turned my love into a debt I could never repay. So I started writing things down. Not for a blog. Not for a therapist. Just for me. I wrote letters to my mom I'd never send. I wrote about the first time she made me cancel plans with a friend because I get lonely on weekends. I wrote about the time I got accepted into an out-of-state job and she guilted me into turning it down by crying in the hospital parking lot, saying her chest felt tight the moment I brought it up. I wrote about the way I used to think maybe she was right, that I wasn't capable of being happy without her approval. By week 3, the letters stopped being angry. They started being grieving. I grieved the childhood I didn't have, the boundaries I wasn't allowed to set, and the man I might have been if I hadn't spent 30 years trying to be her emotional crutch. I called my boss on a whim and asked what it would look like if I took my role remote full-time. He said, honestly, we've been waiting for you to ask. Turns out I'm better at my job when I'm not fielding 10 calls a week from a woman who thinks anxiety attacks are a valid form of negotiation. So I made the decision. I wasn't going back. I called my landlord and ended the lease. Told my job I'd be working remotely from now on. Found a long-term cabin rental just outside Spokane with good internet and even better silence. And then, God help me, I sent one last text to my mother. I am choosing distance so I can finally become who I am. I love you, but I will not return to being your caretaker. I will reach out when I'm ready. Please respect that. Her reply came a day later. You'll regret this. No one loves you like I do. Maybe she's right. But love like that? Love that chains you to their loneliness and calls it devotion? I'll take my chances. So I thought that once I finally broke free physically, emotionally, geographically, that'd be it. I'd made my stand, sent my final message, and started building a life on my terms. But people like my mom? They don't just let go. They escalate. It started with the cousins. 3 of them texted me separately within 48 hours of my last message to her. One said, you can't just abandon the woman who raised you. Another warned, she's not well. Don't wait until it's too late. And my favorite sarcasm alert was from my cousin Heather, who wrote, you used to be such a sweet boy. I don't know what happened to you. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I blocked numbers. One by one. Then it got worse. 2 weeks into my new life up in Spokane, my old landlord texted me. Hey, your mom showed up here looking for you. Said it was an emergency. I told her you'd moved, but she kept pushing. Just a heads up. She drove to my old building. I could picture her standing on the sidewalk, arms folded, scanning every window like I'd magically appear behind one. That same look she'd get when I was 10 minutes late to dinner, like I betrayed her instead of just being human. But I didn't panic. I just took another walk through the woods and reminded myself she has no power here. Until she did something I never saw coming. She filed a missing person report. Yeah, you read that right. I found out because a local sheriff showed up at my rental cabin one afternoon. Nice guy, older, clearly uncomfortable. He asked if I was my full name, and when I said yes, he actually apologized. She said you'd gone off the grid and she was concerned for your safety, he explained, glancing around like he expected to find a manifesto and a pile of unpaid bills. We're not here to force you into contact, just confirming you're alive and well. I showed him my ID. Told him I was working remote. That I was choosing to be off-grid, not being held hostage in a cave. He nodded, muttered something about family drama, and left. But I was shaking. Because she weaponized the law to pull me back. Not because she feared for me, but because I hadn't responded fast enough. That's when I finally snapped. I called a lawyer. Not for a lawsuit, not to press charges. Just to protect myself. He helped me file a cease and desist letter, drafted a no-contact request, and explained what to do if she tried anything again. We talked about restraining orders, just in case. And then, because I couldn't hold it in anymore, I posted everything to my private Facebook. Lockdown audience. Only people I trusted. I told the truth. How she followed me to Portugal. How she broke into my apartment. How she called the cops when I stopped answering her texts. How her version of love felt more like possession. It wasn't petty. It wasn't cruel. It was real. For the first time in my life, I told my story without worrying how it made her look. And something incredible happened. Messages started pouring in. From cousins, friends, even my older brother who I hadn't talked to in years. He messaged me and said, I saw your post. That's the woman I grew up with. That's why I left. We talked for 3 hours that night. He told me stories that mirrored mine, different tactics, same emotional grip. He said he'd always felt guilty for leaving me behind. That he'd assumed I was her favorite, the golden child. But when he read what I wrote, he realized she didn't love either of us, she loved control. I cried. He cried. We agreed to visit each other in the fall. For the first time since I was a kid, I didn't feel like the broken one. I felt like the survivor. I blocked my mom's number, had my lawyer send the official letters, changed my email, scrubbed my name from old accounts. I even changed my address to a P.O. box. And guess what? The silence that followed was the most peaceful thing I've ever known.